For this project I needed a 12 volt 30 amp power supply to go in the caravan, something nice and light. And I noticed there were some good reviews of these switch mode power supplies used for LED lighting. So I purchased one. It was marked S360-12, 12 volts at 30 amps. The power supply tested out okay, so I thought I'd better buy a spare one. So I ordered a second unit from another vendor, around the same price, around about $25. And I received something a little bit different, this one here. It's also marked S360-12. However, when I opened it up and had a look at it, I noticed it's quite different to the first one. There were significant differences, in fact. This one was smaller than this one, and the internal bits and pieces were quite different as well. The first one I received was this one. It's got a circuit board in it marked S-302A. The backup one I purchased has a circuit board in it marked S-400A. I believe the 400A circuit board is actually for a 33 amp supply. When you look at them, you can see that this one here is shorter, probably by about 15 millimeters, and it's also a little bit not quite as wide. There's quite a few other differences, quite significant actually. One of them is that this transformer cum coil is twice the size on that model compared to this one. The capacitors, the filter capacitors, on the better model, they're 680 microfarads each. On this one, it's 220 microfarads, so there's around 3 times as much filtering. There are other differences, such as the resistors. Various resistors on this particular model are slightly larger than the resistors on that model. If we look at the switch that selects either 110 volts or 220, on this particular model it's a fairly small switch soldered to the circuit board. However, on this model it's quite substantially larger, and you'll see it's mounted in a different way. Other differences include the heat sinking. This particular model just has a piece of metal and the devices are clamped against the back panel. On this model there's an extra piece of aluminium around about 5 millimeters thick. Similarly with the heat sink on the diode. The heat sink on that diode is there's only one diode on that model, whereas on this model we see a pair of diodes. The mounting is also different. This model uses 4 millimeter tapped holes in the sides. This model uses 3 millimeter little 3 millimeter holes in the bottom. The other significant difference is you'll notice this particular model has lots and lots of holes, whereas this one doesn't have many holes at all. The front panel of this model is simply just a piece of metal with a cutout for the fan. How do you tell the difference between the two models? Well, I did buy a second one of this particular version as a spare, and you can see that it has quite a lot more holes and is overall a better constructed unit. Now, the last thing I noticed was that the fan on this particular model runs all the time, whereas on this model the fan runs very, very slowly until you start to draw a fair bit of current through it, then it speeds up. So this one runs all the time even though there's no load on it, which makes it a little bit noisier. So when buying these sort of power supplies on eBay, just take a note of what I've discovered here, that you can get, for the same model, you can get different versions where one is better than the other. So it pays to have a close look and see what you're actually getting.